What's the biggest promise your parents broke? When I was 11, my mom swore I could live with her after the divorce. Instead, she moved across the country with her new boyfriend and left me behind. My parents split up in 5th grade. The divorce was messy. They said I'd spend weekdays with mom and weekends with dad. I was closer to mom, so this felt right. Dad moved to a small apartment while mom kept a house. Then mom started dating Keith, a guy from work. He was over all the time, playing video games and eating dinner with us. One night, I overheard them talking. Keith had been offered a job in California, 2,000 miles from our home in Pennsylvania. He wanted mom to move with him. When I asked her about it, she promised nothing would change. Keith might move, but we're staying here. This is our home, she said, hugging me. I believed her. I even told my friends that my mom chose me over her boyfriend. I felt special. 2 months later, I came home from school and found boxes everywhere. Mom was packing clothes. She couldn't look at me when she said Keith's job was too good to pass up, and they were moving to California in 3 weeks. But what about me? I asked, shaking. You'll live with your dad, she said, folding a sweater. It's only temporary, maybe a year. Then you can join us. I cried for days. Dad wasn't prepared for full-time parenting. His apartment had 1 bedroom, so I slept on a pull-out couch. I had to change schools because we lived in a different district. Mom promised to call every day, but the calls became less frequent. First every other day, then twice a week, and just Sundays. Sometimes she'd forget completely. 3 months later, I got a package, a birthday gift, 2 weeks late. Inside was a postcard of a beach with a note. Sorry we couldn't be there. Maybe visit this summer. Love, Mom, and Keith. That summer never came. Neither did the next one. Each time I asked about visiting, there was a new excuse. Keith's job was busy, they needed a bigger place, money was tight. Last week was my high school graduation. Dad and my stepmom, who I've grown to love, sat in the front row cheering. Mom sent a card with $50 and another promise. She'd make it to my college graduation, no matter what. Yesterday, I mailed back the $50 with a note saying she no longer needed to make promises she wouldn't keep. I have all the family I need sitting in the front row.
Am I the a-hole for not letting my sister bring her emotional support ferret to my wedding? So I, 27F, am getting married in October. It's a fairly small wedding, around 75 people, and we're having it at a beautiful botanical garden that has a strict no pets policy. I made this clear on the invitations and in a follow-up group message for guests. My sister, 24F, who I love dearly, has an emotional support ferret named Milo. She's had Milo for about 2 years and swears he helps her with her anxiety. That's totally fine. I respect her needs, but when she asked if she could bring him to the wedding, I told her no, gently, explaining the venue's rules and how it might not be the best setting for an animal, especially one that tends to burrow into anything cloth and freaks out at loud music. She got upset and told me I was being inconsiderate, and said if she couldn't bring Milo, she wouldn't come. I told her I'd love for her to be there, but I can't make an exception that could risk the venue or make other guests uncomfortable. My fiancé's niece is severely allergic to most animals. Now my mom is calling me heartless and saying it's just one little ferret. I'm stuck between wanting my sister there and wanting a drama-free day. My fiancé is backing me 100%, but now I'm wondering. So am I the a-hole for saying no to the ferret?
Am I the asshole for refusing to let my mom wear white to my wedding, even though she claims it's her? Last chance to feel beautiful. I just turned 23 and I'm getting married in October. My mom and I have always had what I would refer to as rocky relationship, especially since I got engaged. She's been oddly competitive, commenting on my body, comparing our rings like we were in a competition. Saying things like this day is as much about me as it is about you. I honestly thought she was joking until she showed me the dress she bought, a white floor-length gown that looks exactly like a bridal dress. And I told her, flat out, she cannot wear that because, in my opinion, it doesn't match the occasion. She got quiet, then burst into tears, saying it's her and this was an opportunity to feel beautiful before getting old, and that I'm selfish for not letting her have this one thing. I felt really bad about this, so I also offered to go shopping with her to find something elegant and more appropriate. And all of a sudden, her countenance changed, and then she told me I was controlling and ungrateful. What gave me peace was that my fiancé backed me up, as did my maid of honor. Now my mom is threatening not to come to the wedding, and my aunt says I should just let her have this to avoid drama. I don't think I'm wrong for drawing a line here, but now part of me wonders if, am I the asshole? Hey guys, if you like the vids, click like, then share, then more. For more videos, comment if you want, ha ha ha. See ya in the next one.
Ouch, it hurts, a blonde woman screams. Her husband runs to her and says, "Is anything wrong?" Terrified, the blonde says, "My whole body hurts whenever I touch it." The worrying husband says, "That's terrible. Since when?" "I don't know. I just put on makeup and it hurts so bad." Her husband says, "I'll drop you off at the doctor's office on my way to work." And after a 5-minute drive, they arrive and the blonde enters the doctor's office. She explains to the doctor that her whole body hurts whenever she touches it. The doctor examines her body and says, "Ma'am, your body seems to be perfectly fine." The blonde insists, "It hurts so bad whenever I touch my body. How can you not believe me?" "That's impossible," says the doctor. "Show me." She takes her finger and pushes her elbow, knees, and ankle, all while screaming in pain. The doctor notices that no matter where she touches, it hurts. "You don't dye your hair, do you?" She says, "No, I'm really a blonde." "I thought so," the doctor says. "Your finger is broken."
Am I the a-hole for leaving my boyfriend's place in the middle of the night after he locked the bathroom? So this happened a few nights ago and I'm honestly still weirded out. I, 28F, was staying over at my boyfriend's, 31N, place we've been dating for about 6 months. Around 11 p.m., I got up to use the bathroom. I tried the handle and it was locked. I waited, thinking maybe he was in there, but nope, he was just sitting on the couch. I asked, "Why is the bathroom locked?" And he says, "I don't let people use my bathroom after 10 p.m. It's a boundary I have." I told him I needed to pee, and he just goes, "You'll have to wait until morning." At that point, I didn't know what to say. I asked him to unlock it, told him this is ridiculous, and he stood firm. My space, my rules. Yeah, I left. I wasn't gonna sit there uncomfortable all night. I live like 15 minutes away, so I just packed up and drove home. I didn't make a scene, just said this was too much for me and left. He texted me later calling me disrespectful and that I should have talked it out instead of walking out. My sister said I did the right thing, but one of my friends said I probably made it bigger than it needed to be and should have just stayed and dealt with it. I don't know, maybe I overreacted. I can't stop thinking who locks the bathroom and tells someone to just hold it? That's not normal, right? Aida for leaving over that?
What's that story you've never been able to tell? One of the first times I invited my girlfriend to spend the night at my college apartment. I went to bed early. We're both gamers, but I'm an early bird and she's a night owl. She reassured me I could go to sleep without her because, little did I know, she had plans to unlock Toad, Toadette, and the special cup in Mario Kart for the GameCube. My apartment complex had very strict parking. There were only 2 parking passes for me and my roommate, but I encouraged my girlfriend to park in the lot anyway because I'd never seen a friend get towed in the couple of years I lived there. She really didn't want to get towed though, so I promised to pay if she got her car impounded. So I go to bed while she plays Mario Kart all night. Little did I realize she's an absolute freak at the game. I wake up early in the morning to find her passed out from a night of gaming. I fire up the GameCube to play some Mario Kart with breakfast, not aware she unlocked almost everything in the game. I proudly proclaim, "You got towed." Barely awake, she responds, "I got towed?" I reply, "Yeah, you got towed last night while I was sleeping. I can't believe it." She says, "I got towed?" I say, "Yeah, don't you remember?" She frantically checks behind the blinds to look outside at the parking lot. She said, "I didn't get towed." I replied, "Yeah, you got towed and Toadette last night. One of our best moments for sure, haha."
Have you ever accidentally saved a life? I was leaving school on a Friday when I saw a kid from my class walking home. It looked like he was carrying all of his books, and I thought he must just be a nerd bringing them all home for the weekend. I was pretty popular at the time and was going to a party that night, so I just kept walking. But then, a few guys were passing him, and all decided to trip him, so he landed in the dirt. They stepped on his glasses and laughed at him. I felt horrible, so I went over to help. He looked totally broken, but when I helped him up, he sort of smiled at me. His name was Kyle, and I asked why I had never seen him before. He actually lived close to me, and turned out to be pretty cool, and I don't know why, but before he left, I invited him to the party that night. I was really surprised when he actually showed up and we got to know him. He came back to school with all his books that Monday, and by senior year, we were best friends. He completely changed, and all the girls loved him now. And at graduation, he had to give a speech since he had the best grades. He was nervous, but I told him he'd do great. He got up, but instead of giving his speech, he told everyone about that Friday when I said hi to him. He told our entire grade that he was actually taking all his books home that weekend because he planned to take his own life that night, and so his mom didn't have to go clean out his locker. He said I literally saved his life that day, and I didn't even know.
My wife was having a baby, but there was a problem. After a long and stressful ride to the hospital, we entered and saw 3 of my best friends already there with their wives. I was confused and asked them, "Wait, you're all having a baby?" They all nodded. After a few minutes, a nurse approached my first friend and said, "Congrats, you're a father of twins." My friend jumped in happiness and said, "Wow, that's crazy because I work for the Minnesota Twins." A few minutes later, the nurse came back to my second friend and said, "Congrats, you're a father of triplets." He jumped in happiness, hugged us all, and said, "Wow, I can't believe it. I work for the 3M company. Then the nurse approached me and said, Congrats! You're a father of quadruplets! I jumped like crazy, kissed all my friends, and said, Yes. That's also crazy because I work at the Four Seasons Hotel. Then I noticed my third friend freaking out and banging his head on the wall. I asked him, What's wrong, man? Why are you banging your head on the wall? He took a deep breath and replied, I'm doomed. Man, did you forget I work at 7-Eleven?
I poured a drink on a girl's head. I, 28 Mem, was at a music festival that I had been looking forward to for months with 2 friends. There is no assigned seating at the outdoor venue, and there are a few hundred people. While the opener was on, I went to get 3 drinks for me and my friends, a beer can in one hand, and 2 open plastic cups in the other. On my way back to try and find my friends, the main artist was starting. The cheering and music was amazing. The energy was exactly what I had been looking forward to, and the crowd was all trying to get closer to the stage. I was bumped and spilled a bit on myself and another girl. She was not happy, and tried to say something to me, but I couldn't hear her. I apologized the best I could, knowing she likely couldn't hear me, and tried to continue through the crowd. When I turned away, she grabbed my hand and wrestled 2 of the drinks from me, only to throw them on the floor, spilling more on both of us and everyone around us. I couldn't believe what was happening, and looked back at her trying to understand why. When I saw her and the grin on her face, I knew why. So I took my 3rd drink, the full beer can, and poured it on her head. I then immediately turned around to head back to the bar and get more drinks. I heard people yelling behind me asking, WTF was that? But realized as I went to defend myself what I had really just done, and how nobody around us would have saw the first part of the interaction. So I kept walking, and didn't look back.
If I win $8 million at the casino and leave immediately, what will be the consequences? I used to be a duty manager at a casino, and I've seen people win the kind of money you're talking about. Let me tell you exactly what goes down. That person, we already know them. UK casinos don't work like the movies. This guest has likely lost millions here over the years. So no, we're not rude. We're happy for them. Smiles, handshakes, the whole deal. I'll even invite them to dinner in the restaurant or share a fancy bottle of wine. Why? Because we want them back. That's the key. If you win and the room celebrates you, you'll feel good about returning. The table staff, they're smiling too. Tips are a big part of this, so yeah, they want you happy. After dinner, I sign off on the payout. These days, it's usually a bank transfer. Not all 8 million, though. Maybe 5 or 6. The rest, they leave it with us. Their choice. We never suggest it, but they're still in town, and chances are they'll be back to play again. We can send that money anytime they ask. Once that's sorted, I personally walk them to one of our waiting cars. They go wherever they want. Some even keep the driver around just in case they feel like swinging back later. And every time we chat, we talk about them. Their business, their daughter's wedding, their son's school, tickets to events they like. We've got it all in their file. Sounds slick? Maybe, but that's the job.
What's the craziest reason you had to fire someone? Not me, but my dad. He has a small handyman company with less than a handful of employees. His tools somehow have the habit of growing legs when he's at construction sites, so he rigorously writes his name on everything with a permanent marker. One day, shortly after he hired someone new, his folding ruler is missing. He asks around if anyone has seen his folding ruler, but that doesn't seem to be the case. He doesn't think much of it. Sometimes things get lost. The next day, he sees the new hire with a familiar-looking folding ruler. He asks him to see it. New hire refuses. Dad tells him that he's his boss and insists he shows him the ruler. He complies under pressure. Sure enough, there's my dad's name on it in capital and bold letters. Now that could have been an honest mistake, and there probably wouldn't have been any repercussions if he simply said, "Oh, my bad. Must have put the wrong one in my pocket. Here's your ruler." But the new hire insisted that this was his ruler, and that the name on the side of it wasn't my dad's handwriting, but rather a note the new hire had written on it himself to remember my dad's name. What makes it even more stupid is that my dad's company pays for the tools of his employees. He could have simply asked for a folding ruler and my dad would have given him one for free, but no, he needs to steal the boss's folding ruler and give the stupidest lie imaginable as an excuse.
After my father passed away, my mother revealed her true nature. Not long after his funeral, she married my dad's best friend, and his family moved into our house. My mother began neglecting me, and one day, she kicked me out of my room because my stepsister wanted to turn it into a walk-in closet. I ended up living in the basement. Before my dad died, when I was 13, he gave me a puppy named Bean, who became my closest companion. When I turned 15, my mom and stepdad announced we were moving out of state for his job. My mom sold our house, packed up everything, and threw out all of my dad's belongings. I clung to Bean, terrified he'd be discarded next. On the way to the airport, my stepdad mentioned he'd forgotten to buy Bean's carrier and ticket. My mom panicked, saying we didn't have time. I begged them to buy the ticket at the airport, but my stepdad insisted on leaving Bean behind. He tore Bean from my arms, leaving him by the side of the road. As we drove away, Bean tried to chase the car, crying in confusion. What devastated me most was that when we got to the airport, we were 2 hours early for our flight. Everyone watches my videos but forgets to like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. I appreciate you all. My mom left us, so we decided to leave her behind too. When I was 18, I discovered that my mom had been chatting with someone online who lived in another state. One day, she decided to fly out and meet him. She planned to stay for a week, and at first I was thrilled to have the house to myself. But that week turned into 2, then 3. Before I knew it, a whole month had passed without any sign of my mom. People kept asking when she'd be back, but she never gave a clear answer. After about 2 months, I got a call from her. She told me she was staying there for good and that I was now responsible for the house, including paying all the bills. I refused, but she insisted that since she wasn't living there anymore, it was up to me. I told her she needed to come back and handle the house because it was in her name, not mine. She hung up on me and then started ignoring all my calls and texts, no matter how many times I tried to reach her. Eventually, I packed my stuff and moved to my dad's place. When the bills started coming in, she sent me links to the payment sites, but I ignored them. When she realized I wasn't paying, she called, screaming that I was irresponsible and would get in trouble for not handling the bills. I reminded her that they weren't my responsibility, especially since I was living with Dad now. She ended the call by telling me she hoped I'd end up homeless on the streets and then hung up on me.
My parents worship my sister, so I picked my brother. Instead, my brother Joe and I have always been close, but not because we're similar. It's because our parents made it so damn clear who they actually cared about. Joe has a twin sister, Jill, and our parents have always treated her like she's royalty. They wanted a daughter so bad, they practically forgot Joe existed. Jill got the attention, the shopping trips, the praise. Joe got ignored, so I stepped in. I started doing little things for him, taking him out with my friends when Jill went on her mall princess adventures, cheering him on at school plays while our parents skipped out for one of Jill's glittery pageants. At first, it was just pity, but over time, I realized something. I actually like Joe. He's real, funny, grounded. Meanwhile, Jill's grown into this bratty, entitled, can't be bi. Now they're both graduating. Jill's heading to some fancy school in San Francisco, fully funded by mommy and daddy, of course. Joe got into a school near me in Seattle. He earned a full-ride scholarship. You'd think that'd make our parents proud, but no. They're using it as an excuse to not give him a single cent. You know, Kay, you got a scholarship? Cool, figure the rest out on your own. So I called a few people while on FaceTime with Joe, trying to help him line up a decent job for the fall. Told him he's better off not being financially tied to our parents anyway, that with their money comes their control. He started to feel better, like he wasn't completely screwed. And then the next day, Jill starts blowing up my phone. Apparently she overheard the whole thing. Starts demanding I help her find a job too, because she doesn't want to hear Dad nagging her about money. I told her politely that I don't know anyone in SF. She's better off just asking our parents. That's when she lost it. Called me out for favoring Joe over her. Said I was picking sides, and honestly, yeah, I am. I don't even deny it anymore. Joe deserves someone in his corner. Jill has everyone else. She doesn't need me. She doesn't need me. And maybe that's the whole point. Jill's always had everything handed to her: support, attention, money, so when someone finally says no, it feels like betrayal. But Joe, he's never had that luxury. He's had to earn every bit of love and recognition he gets, and I'll be damned if he has to do it alone. So yeah, I picked a side, and I'd pick it again. Not because I hate Jill, but because someone had to choose Joe. And if that makes me the villain in her story, fine. At least I'm the hero in his.
My son tried to impress a girl. 6 months later, he was in a body bag. There are moments as a parent where you think, this can't be real, not my kid, not my family. But pain has a way of creeping in slowly, like a leak in the foundation, until everything collapses. I used to think I knew my son. I used to think I was doing everything right. But the truth is, I missed the signs. Or maybe I ignored them because it was easier than facing what was right in front of me. This isn't a story I ever wanted to tell, but if I don't, someone else might go through the same thing. You see, his mom died when Jake was 11 from an eating disorder. She'd make him huge meals while secretly starving herself. Jake found her collapsed in our kitchen. Her last words to him were, "You're perfect just the way you are, baby." Now my son was calling himself fat in the same way, convinced those words were just another lie. That evening, I told him about a therapist that a family friend had recommended. "No, Dad, I hate you." I expected him to yell, but instead he just silently nodded like he knew it was coming. And for weeks, Jake went without complaint. Dr. Liam said he was making excellent progress. Jake even started eating breakfast with me sometimes. I thought we'd beaten this thing until 6 months later when the police called. They told me my son was trying to drown himself in Miller Lake at 5 a.m. But Jake wasn't trying to die. He was doing Navy SEAL training in 40-degree water, lips blue and hypothermic, still doing laps. When they pulled him out, he kept saying, "I'm not weak anymore. Tell Sarah I'm not weak." The paramedic said he asked them to check his body fat percentage in the ambulance. He was 119 pounds and 5'8". He was asleep at the hospital when Sarah showed up wearing his hoodie. She brought Trevor, who stood there smirking. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said, but then added, "I was just being honest about the hoodie." Jake woke up while she was talking. He saw the hoodie and started laughing. Not normal laughing, the disturbing kind. "Of course you're wearing it," he said. "Of course you are." He wouldn't stop laughing. The nurse called for a sedative while Sarah backed out of the room. But even after they left, Jake's heart rate wouldn't stabilize. The doctor pulled me aside and explained that his body was shutting down. They started forth nutrition, but Jake kept pulling at the tubes. "It's making me fat," he whispered. That night his heart stopped twice. They brought him back both times, but the doctor said the damage was extensive. He woke up once more. "Dad, am I skinny enough now?" he asked. I told him he was perfect, that he'd always been perfect. He smiled and said, "Don't lie to me like Mom did." Jake died at 3:30 a.m. The official cause was cardiac arrest due to severe malnutrition and hypothermia. I didn't say a word, not because I wasn't extremely heartbroken, but because I knew I had to make Sarah pay. But not with violence. That would have been too easy. And Jake deserved more than easy. He deserved truth. He deserved justice. I collected everything. The messages, the hoodie, witness accounts from the hospital. And when the school board refused to do anything, I went to the press. I told Jake's story. I used Sarah's name. I made sure everyone knew. She lost her scholarship. Trevor transferred. Their parents tried to sue me for defamation. They lost. But none of that brought my son back. Now, every year, on the anniversary of his death, I return to Miller Lake. I sit by the water, whispering the words I should have said sooner. You were perfect. You were always enough. And I promise him, again and again, that I'll keep telling his story. Because silence is what killed his mother. Silence is what nearly killed him. And silence is what I will never allow again.
Employers. What's the most insane thing you've ever seen on a resume? The only resume I have thrown right in the proverbial shredder was that of my friend's wife. I was attempting to get her a job at my employer. She had no degree or relevant experience, but we needed a receptionist, and people commonly move up from those jobs into other admin positions. Plus, it's government work, so good benefits, lots of paid holidays, etc. Bottom line, I was doing this underqualified, unemployed person a massive favor by giving her a reference and a chance. We didn't have any other applicants. The job was hers to lose. She didn't know that, so she brought her A game. Here are some excerpts from her cover letter. I may not have a degree, but I have what engineers don't have. 10 years of experience. I have better social skills than engineers do. I was just like, you know I'm an engineer, right? She did. Continued, you know the job you'd be applying for is a receptionist position, not an engineer position, right? She seemed pretty sure she could move up and be an engineer in a year or so. That is not at all a thing in my field, but she was absolutely sure it was. I told her that if she was going to submit this, she wouldn't be hired because the entire panel was engineers. She didn't listen and submitted it and even listed me as a reference. I told my boss she was someone I was trying to help and she wouldn't help herself, which was accurate. Her line, "I've got what engineers don't have, 10 years of experience," became the office joke for years to come. Every time someone reached the 10-year mark of their career, we'd be like, "You can't be an engineer anymore. The crazy lady said 10 years is the limit. Haha."
Other than cheating, what secret do you keep from your partner to prevent upsetting them? 12 years into my marriage with Emma, I was helping her clean out our basement when I found an old college notebook stuffed in a cardboard box. The pages were yellowed and filled with her messy handwriting from economics classes. I was about to toss it when a folded letter fell out. The date made my stomach drop. 2 months before our wedding. It was addressed to someone named Jake. I should have put it back immediately. But seeing my wife's handwriting talking about our upcoming wedding made me curious. What I read next changed everything. "Jake, I keep thinking about that night we talked until 4 a.m. about moving to Portland together. Tomorrow I'm supposed to finalize the wedding menu, but all I can think about is what you said about following dreams instead of safe choices. I love him. I really do. He's kind and stable and everything my mom wants from me. But when I imagine our life together, it feels like I'm watching someone else's movie. With you, I felt like the main character in my own story. I know you're seeing someone new now, and maybe that's for the best. But if I ever read this letter again years from now, I'll know I settled. I'm scared I'm making the biggest mistake of my life, but the invitations are already sent." My hands were shaking as I folded the letter back up. I placed it exactly where I found it and carried the box upstairs like nothing happened. That night at dinner, Emma told me about her day at work and laughed at my stupid joke about the neighbor's cat. She looked so happy, so content. Had she forgotten about Jake completely? Or did she still think about Portland sometimes? I started noticing things I'd never paid attention to before. When she stared out the window during movies, was she thinking about the life she didn't choose? When she didn't laugh at my jokes, was she comparing me to him? him? When she chose to go to bed early instead of staying up talking, was she remembering those 4 a.m. conversations? I couldn't help myself. I started trying harder without even realizing it. I planned surprise weekend trips to places she mentioned wanting to visit. I started cooking her favorite pasta dish every Friday. I bought her books by authors she'd mentioned once in passing. I wasn't trying to win her over exactly, but I needed to make sure she never felt like she'd settled. The worst part was how good our life actually was. We had inside jokes that made us laugh until we cried. We traveled to weird roadside attractions just because they looked fun. She still kissed my forehead every morning while making coffee. We were happy, genuinely happy. But that letter lived in the back of my mind like a splinter. 6 months after finding the letter, I was putting away laundry when I saw Emma's phone light up with a Facebook notification. Jake Morrison sent you a friend request. My heart stopped. I pretended not to see it, but I watched her face when she checked her phone later. She stared at the screen for a long time, then declined the request without opening his profile. She never mentioned it. I never asked. That night she cuddled closer to me than usual and said, "I'm really happy. You know that, right?" I told her I was happy too, and I meant it. But I also wondered if she was trying to convince herself as much as me. 3 years have passed since I found that letter. Emma still doesn't know I read it. Part of me wants to ask her about Jake, about Portland, about whether she ever regrets choosing our safe, steady life together. But I'm terrified the answer might shatter the beautiful thing we've built.
People with sociopath friends, why are you friends with them? My roommate from college is a diagnosed sociopath, and he's the most reliable friend I have. We met freshman year when I found him sitting alone, writing down what people did when they laughed. He told me straight up that he didn't really get people but was trying to learn. I thought he was joking until I saw him practice smiling in the mirror before parties. What's weird is that he remembers everything I've ever told him. When my mom got sick, he showed up with groceries and said, "You won't remember to eat properly. I've researched nutritious meals that are easy to make. Not a hint of emotion, just logic." He once asked why people cry at funerals if the person is already dead. But then he drove 6 hours to attend my grandpa's funeral because social support improves grief outcomes. His girlfriend dumped him because he forgot Valentine's Day. He genuinely didn't understand why one random day matters more than others. The next day, he made a spreadsheet of all holidays with reminders set weeks ahead. Last week, he called me at 3 a.m. asking, "Is it normal to feel something warm in your chest when your son smiles at you?" His wife just had a baby, and I think he might actually be experiencing love for the first time. He's reading parenting books every night. People think sociopaths are all dangerous, but my friend just sees the world differently. He chooses to be good because it's logical, and sometimes that's more reliable than emotional goodness that comes and goes.
I went to military training, but the problem is I forgot my gun. I didn't know what to do, so the sergeant handed me a stick and said, "You'll have to use this instead of a gun." Confused, I asked, "What? How can I use a stick instead of a gun?" The sergeant replied, "Just aim at the enemy and shout, 'Bangity bang bang,' and if they get too close, use it like a knife and say, 'Stabbity stab stab.'" I thought he was kidding, but to my surprise, when I aimed the stick at a trainee and shouted, "Bangity bang bang," they fell down like I actually hit them. And moments later, another trainee tried running past me, so I used the stick like a knife and shouted, "Stabbity stab stab," and he went down. And then I saw a trainee walking very slowly, so I took aim and shouted, "Bangity bang bang." However, this trainee didn't go down this time, and instead he started walking towards me slowly and dramatically. I started to panic, so I pretended to reload my stick, and I desperately shouted, "Bangity bang bang, stabbity stab stab," but nothing worked. And moments later, the other trainee knocked me onto the ground and shouted, "Tankity tank tank." I went to my buddy Jason's house and rang the doorbell. Problem is, Jason's wife, Kim, answers, wearing just a bathrobe. I said, "Hi, Kim, is Jason home?" Kim says, "No, you just missed him. He went to the hardware store and I was just going to jump into the shower." I hesitated for a second and then said, "Kim, please keep this between us, but I always thought you were pretty as hell. I'll give you $500 if you take that robe off and let me see you totally nude. I won't touch, but I want you to put your hands in your hair and do a slow turnaround so I can see everything." Kim thinks for a minute. She needs the money, and it seems pretty harmless, so she drops her robe. I said, "You are beautiful," gave her $500, and left. Moments later, she sees her husband, Jason, at the kitchen. Shocked, she says, "Jason, what are you doing here?" Jason replies, "Well, I went to the store and they were closed. By the way, who was that on the door?" She replies, "It was your friend. He came over to say hi." Jason sees her holding 5 $100 bills in her hand and says, "Hey, he finally brought the $500 he owes me."
When did you realize your parents were failing you? When I was 11, my mom trusted me with all her heart. Because by that age, I had already learned how to do my own laundry, how to cook a meal with only 3 ingredients, and how to wrap a tight blanket around myself at night so it felt like someone was holding me. And it's not like my mom was absent from the home or anything. She just spent all her time locked in her room working on her art. And as for why her art was never enough to pay the bills, I just figured that she trusted me enough to make budget-friendly choices. So even when I woke up in the middle of the night to gunshots, or the 100-degree heat in summer because we had no AC, I felt a sense of deep pride. And whenever I went to my friends' houses, I always cooked the entire house dinner. And they'd wake up to the house, spick and span. Counters wiped, sofas hoovered, even got the dollar bills that fell in between the cushions. They'd always say, "Your mom must be an incredible woman with how well she raised you." And I'd respond with a huge, beaming smile, "Yes, she is the best." No one ever questioned why I was so underweight, why I wasn't able to sleep in a bed, and instead always opted for the hardwood floor. Why I couldn't even get through a sentence without apologizing. Always just thought I was mature and polite. So one day, when my mom came out of her room for the first time in days, she asked me what day it was. I told her Wednesday. I thought if I made myself seem cheery, she would love me how I always wanted. All of a sudden, she started thrashing around and punched a hole in the wall. Fuck, 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 fuck. I thought it was fucking Tuesday. The payout was today. When I walked up to her, she lifted her fist as if she was about to take her anger out on me. So I made sure to speak really quickly. "Mom, I have $20. Immediately, her face softened. "Honey, you were the kindest, most mature girl a mother could ever ask for." But I didn't have time to savor the moment, because as soon as she snatched it from my hand, she walked over to the store to buy art supplies, came home, and went back to working on her art. Now, you may be wondering where I got the $20 from. Well, there was this rich kid at school who always had lunch money. He was mean to everyone anyway, spitting on kids that looked poor. I started to keep a mental record of who I could take from and when, all for those brief moments when Mom would emerge. Eating another $20, another $40, another fix of her art supplies. And like all preteens breaking the law, I got cocky. And after just 3 months, Ms. Lee caught me. I already knew what was going down when she called me into her office. I thought she was going to call the police, or at least scream at me. But no. Instead, she asked me questions. Not an interrogation. More like making conversation. Her, "What's your favorite food?" Me? "Rice with ketchup?" Her? "What do you and your mom do for fun?" Me? Sometimes when she gets her government check and she does art in her room, I talk to her from the crack of the door, telling her about my day. Her, "What time do you go to sleep?" Me. 2 a.m. the entire time. I had a smile, but her eyes filled with tears. She told me to wait there while she went to go get someone and handed me a Nintendo Switch to keep me occupied, and 2 hours later, I heard a knock on the door. It wasn't just Ms. Lee because it was Ms. Lee with 2 police officers and a lady in a suit who said she was from Family Services. They all had the same look, like they were trying to smile, but couldn't quite manage it. "Sweetie, we're going to take a ride to your house," the lady said. "We need to check on your mom." I began hyperventilating. No shit. I began hyperventilating. No shit. My whole body locked up, my hands turned cold even though it was hot out. I kept thinking if she finds out I told them anything, even accidentally, she'll hate me. "She'll never come out of that room again." They let me sit in the front seat of the car, the lady. Ms. Harper kept saying things like, "You're very brave, and we just want to make sure everyone's okay." But it all sounded like white noise when we pulled up to my apartment complex. I swear the sun dimmed. They knocked first politely, no answer, then one of the officers knocked louder, shouting, "Police ma'am, we're doing a wellness check." Still no answer. I told him she never came out when people knocked, not unless she was expecting them, so the officer tried the handle. It wasn't locked as soon as the door creaked open. The smell hit turpentine old takeout sweat. The apartment was exactly how I'd left it that morning, except darker. All the windows were covered with taped up canvases. They called her name, walked through the tiny hallway. I stared at the welcome mat like it could save me. Finally, I heard one of them say, "We found her. She's okay, but she's not well. I wasn't allowed to go in right away, Ms." Harper crouched beside me, her voice gentler than before. "She's alive, sweetheart, but she's not in a place where she can take care of you right now." That phrase felt like a knife to the chest. Not in a place. As if it were just temporary, as if it hadn't been 11 years. I don't remember much after that. A lot of whispering the neighbor, peeking at her door, me clutching the Nintendo Switch like it was the only thing that made sense in the moment. They placed me in emergency foster care that night. A woman named Carla let me sleep on her couch and made me a grilled cheese. I ate 3 when I asked if I could go back home soon. She said, "Let's just take things one day at a time." I'm older now. I don't hate my mom. I write her letters sometimes, even though I'm not sure if she gets them at the facility. I've learned to eat more than just rice and ketchup. I've learned how to accept a compliment without saying sorry, and I've learned that being mature at 11 doesn't mean you were strong. It means you were surviving, and now I'm trying to live.
To all deaf people, what are some things you thought were silent, but later found out they weren't? I've been fully deaf since birth, and my family can hear, so I had to figure out the rules of sound as I grew up. There were rules I didn't understand until I went to a school for the deaf, where students shared tips they'd learned. For example, I never understood why my brother got mad at me for chewing with my mouth open. I couldn't help it. I had allergies, so I chewed with my mouth open to breathe easier. I thought it was because he didn't want to see my food. Then, at about 8 years old, I realized it was noisy. Doors should be closed softly. Deaf people have to remember not to slam them shut. A friend, whose parents parents are deaf, had a hearing friend over. His mom was cooking when his friend asked, "Why is she mad?" My friend laughed. His mom wasn't mad, just deaf. It's common for deaf kids to not realize that people can hear farts. Even deaf adults sometimes forget and let one out in public. Dragging your feet, a habit many deaf people have. Apparently, it annoys hearing people because it makes noise. Running machines at night? I used to drive my family crazy because my husband and I ran the dishwasher and dryer before bed. My parents looked exhausted. The noise kept them awake. But the biggest thing? Bodily sounds. Like farting, a lot of body parts make noise, and we don't realize how loud it is. I've always been amazed by how many rules of sound hearing people just know. But deaf people have to learn. When I explain a rule to a hearing person, they're always surprised because they never had to think about it. What did your mom do that became the stuff of legend? One night when I was 15, my mom and I overheard our drunk neighbors loudly discussing, though they thought they were whispering, how they were going to poison one of our dogs because she wouldn't stop barking at them. Being just 15 at the time, I was ready to march over there and confront all 5 of them. Best case, I'd get a serious beating. Worst case, well, I don't want to think about it. My mom had her own idea of how to handle the situation. What she did next, I could never have imagined. She grabbed my dad's 12-gauge shotgun, racked a shell, punched out the screen of her bedroom window, and leaned out just enough for them to see her. All she said was, "You mess with my dog, and it's over." The neighbors quickly decided that running into their garage was the smartest option. That night, I learned several new phrases of colorful Hispanic profanity as they shouted back and forth. For the next few hours, my mom kept her perch by the window, ensuring they stayed in their garage until my dad got home from work. As soon as his car pulled into the driveway, the neighbors bolted to their own car, yelling things at my mom I won't repeat. Luckily, the neighbors decided almost immediately that they'd rather live somewhere else. Our dogs went on to live long, peaceful lives, passing from natural causes. And my mom, she became a legend in our house that night.
What happened when a teacher broke the rules? I never planned to be a high school dropout. I was a straight A student until my mom got sick during junior year. Pancreatic cancer, terminal. Suddenly, I was missing school 3 days a week to drive her to chemo, make meals when she couldn't stand, and pick up my little brother. My perfect attendance record shattered. My grades plummeted. The school's absence policy was clear. Miss more than 15 days per semester, automatic failure. By November, I had missed 22. The counselor called me in. "I'm sorry about your situation," she said, not looking sorry at all. "But rules are rules. You'll need to repeat the semester." I walked out knowing I'd never come back. What was the point? My mom needed me more than I needed a diploma. The next morning, Mr. Harlow, my history teacher, was waiting by my locker. "You weren't in class yesterday," he said. I explained the counselor's verdict. He frowned. "Come with me." He led me to his classroom where 5 other teachers sat in a circle. Mrs. Patel from chemistry, Ms. Washington from English, Mr. Lee from calculus, even Coach Brennan. "We heard what happened," Mr. Harlow said, "and we think it's wrong." Mrs. Patel leaned forward. "We've created an alternative program for you. Independent study, flexible deadlines, work you can do from the hospital waiting room." I stared at them. "But the absence policy," Mr. Lee cut in. "Let us worry about that. Are you willing to try?" For the next month, I completed assignments between doctor appointments. I took tests during lunch periods when I could make it to school. The teachers created a private online forum where I could participate in discussions at 2 a.m. when my mom was finally asleep. My grades began to recover. Then Principal Vaughn stopped me in the hallway. "Interesting arrangement you have," he said coldly. "Very creative interpretation of our attendance policy." My stomach dropped. "The teachers are just helping me." He cut me off. "They're undermining district policy. This ends today. You'll attend regular classes like everyone else, or you'll fail. Period." That afternoon, all 5 teachers were called to the principal's office. They emerged looking grim. Mr. Harlow found me in the cafeteria. "He's shutting us down," he said quietly. "Says we're creating liability issues and setting a precedent." I nodded, numb. "It's okay. I knew it couldn't last." But Mr. Harlow wasn't finished. "We took a vote. We're not stopping." My head snapped up. "But you could get fired." He smiled slightly. "Some things matter more than jobs." The next day, a substitute teacher appeared in Mr. Harlow's class, then in Mrs. Patel's. By week's end, all 5 teachers had been suspended pending review. Word spread quickly. Students began wearing homemade badges. "Stand with the 5." Parents flooded the next school board meeting. "My daughter has severe migraines," one mother testified. These teachers created the first learning environment where she wasn't punished for her medical condition. A father stood next. "My son works 2 jobs to help support our family." These teachers recognized his reality instead of forcing him to choose between education and survival. More parents followed. More stories. The meeting lasted until midnight. 3 days later, the superintendent called an emergency press conference. "We're implementing a new compassionate attendance policy," she announced, "and reinstating the 5 teachers who reminded us what education is truly about." My mom died 2 months before graduation. All 5 teachers came to her funeral. When I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, the entire auditorium stood. Not for me, for her, and for the teachers who refused to let the system push me out when I needed it most.
What made the high school legend become a legend? This kid, Tyler, in my physics class was super quiet. Always sat in the front row, never caused any trouble. He had this way of taking detailed notes while seeming completely focused on learning. Our physics teacher, Ms. Henderson, was notorious for her pop quizzes and strict no-phone policy. She'd confiscate phones instantly if she saw them, claiming they destroyed students' ability to focus on complex scientific concepts. But Henderson had this disturbing habit. Whenever someone got caught with their phone, she'd keep it locked in her desk drawer for the entire day, claiming it was standard protocol for electronic distractions during class time. Kids started noticing their phones would come back acting weird. Battery drained completely. New apps installed. Photos mysteriously deleted or resorted. She demanded with her hand outstretched expectantly. Calmly reached into his bag and handed over his brand new Samsung Galaxy S23, like a $900 Christmas present from his grandparents. The device was pristine, still had the protective case with his name engraved on it. But instead of looking upset about losing his expensive phone, Tyler just smiled. This weird, knowing, almost amused expression that I'd never seen from him before. He'd always been so serious and studious. Then Tyler politely raised his hand. He spoke with unusual confidence. Henderson snorted dismissively. Breaks my rules. She seemed to enjoy exercising this particular power over students. Tyler shook his head slowly, remaining completely calm. From confiscated student phones, so she installed monitoring software on that Samsung as bait last week. Every keystroke, every app open, every attempt to crack passwords gets logged in real time and traced back. Ms. Henderson froze. What did you just say? She asked, the smugness draining from her face. Tyler didn't flinch. I said, every action you've taken on student phones this past week has been recorded. You've been accessing private messages, photos, even trying to bypass lock screens. That's a federal offense, Ms. Henderson. The room fell silent. A few students exchanged wide-eyed glances. Someone in the back whispered, "No way." I gave you that phone knowing exactly what you'd do with it, Tyler continued. I coded the monitoring software myself. It sent encrypted logs to the cloud every hour. One copy to the school board, one to the police. Ms. Henderson's lips parted, but no words came out, and I made sure it alerted the moment you opened anything private. The classroom door opened. 2 men in suits stepped in, followed by the principal, who looked pale. Ms. Henderson, one man said, flashing a badge. We need a word. Tyler turned to the class, shrugged, and walked out with a grin, leaving behind a stunned room and a story they'd be telling for years. What's something that happened to you that sounds completely fake but is 100% real? I once accidentally married a woman at a gas station, so I was on a solo road trip through Nevada, middle of nowhere, 112 degrees out. And I stop at this dusty gas station with a broken sign that just says, gas, bait, and rings. I go in for a Gatorade and see a woman arguing with the cashier. She's in a wedding dress. Not joking. Apparently her groom bailed on her mid-ceremony and she just kept driving until she ran out of gas. I make a dumb joke like, rough day to be in lace, huh? She laughs. We chat. Long story short, we're both dehydrated and emotionally unstable. Cashier, who I swear looked like a desert version of Danny DeVito, says, I'm ordained. I'll marry you two right now for a Slim Jim and a full tank. We laugh it off. But then he actually pulls out paperwork and says it's legit. Some weird Nevada roadside wedding loophole. And she just looks at me and goes, screw it. Why not? I say, why not, too. 8 minutes later, boom, married at pump number 3. A tumbleweed literally rolled by as we kissed. We spent the next 3 days in Vegas like it was a bizarre honeymoon. Ate at a buffet, lost $40 at blackjack, got matching tattoos of raccoons with cowboy hats. Then we just parted ways. We never saw each other again. 6 years later, I got a jury duty summons and realized I'm still legally married.
What's the funniest way you've gotten revenge on a teacher? My high school teacher had one rule: no talking. It wasn't just during texts or lectures. We couldn't talk at all. It didn't matter if you were asking for a pencil, working on a group project, or asking to use the bathroom. If you talked, you got in trouble. Nobody understood why he was so strict about it. He never explained. He just hated when students spoke to each other. So after school, I texted everyone in class and set up a plan. The next day, we all walked in completely silent. We made direct eye contact, but not a single word was spoken. He must have thought we finally gave up. Then we pulled out the whiteboard. Every time someone needed to say something, they just wrote it down and held it up. Can I borrow a pen? What page are we on? Dude, I hate this class. Within minutes, the entire classroom was silent, except for the sound of dry erase markers squeaking nonstop. Our teacher's eyes started twitching. He tried to ignore it at first, but then people started getting creative. A guy in the back was holding up terrible stick figure drawings. Someone started writing jokes mid-lesson and passing them around. The teacher snapped. He slammed his hands on his desk and yelled, "That's it! Everyone drop the whiteboards." We just stared at him. Then someone in the front very slowly lifted their board. Why? He turned bright red and stormed out to get the principal. A few minutes later, they both came back, and the principal just sighed. "Are they talking?" the principal asked. "No. Are they being disruptive?" The teacher looked around at a classroom of completely silent students writing in perfectly legible sentences. He sighed again. Technically, no. The teacher lost it. The next day, the syllabus had an emergency update. Whiteboards are no longer allowed in this classroom. Totally worth it.
What's the most inaccurate thing your child has ever been taught in school? This one still bothers my mom to this day. My little brother is really smart. His high school calculus teacher even called him once-in-a-generation smart. He spends his free time reading encyclopedias and testing out math formulas. This year, he represented our country at the International Math Olympiad and did amazing. But his true passion is physics. By age 13, he already knew what he wanted to write his master's thesis on. Science was, of course, his favorite subject. In 7th grade, he had an unfortunate science teacher who believed in creationist ideas. Despite that, he excelled in the class and science remained his strongest subject. Then came the mid-year exam. He flew through it, confident he'd score 100% because he knew all the answers. But when the results came back, he lost points on one question. What is the smallest known particle? He answered quarks, which is correct, but his teacher marked it wrong, saying the answer was atom. Even I know atoms are made of protons, neutrons, and electrons. My mom encouraged him to speak up. Though shy, he asked his teacher to correct the grade and even printed a source to prove his answer. She refused, calling him disrespectful, and then bad-mouthed him to other classes for a week. The teasing crushed him, so he told my mom. Furious, she confronted the teacher, then dragged her to the principal's office. The principal sided with my brother. He got his 100%, and the teacher had to apologize in front of his class. He became a legend after that, and the teacher never denied him a mark again.
What's the one secret you kept from your parents that would shock them? When I was 17, I found out I was adopted through a DNA test I did for a school science project. My parents had no idea I knew. I always felt different from my family. My parents are both short with brown hair, but I am tall with blonde hair and green eyes. When kids asked, my mom would say, "You have your grandfather's genes." The DNA test was supposed to be simple. We were studying genetics when we had to compare our results with family members. I swabbed my cheek thinking I'd get boring results. Instead, I got matched with a half-sister named Beatrice, who lived 3 states away. My hands were shaking as I read her message. "I think we might be related. Do you know anything about being adopted?" My world flipped upside down. Beatrice and I started talking every day. She told me our birth mom was named Vivian and had given up 2 babies for adoption. Beatrice was adopted by a family in Ohio. I was supposedly adopted by mine in Texas, but my parents never told me. I became obsessed with finding the truth. I made fake social media accounts to research my birth mom, found her Facebook page. She looked exactly like me, but older. Same eyes, same smile, same everything. Vivian's page showed a normal life. She worked as a nurse, had a dog named Buddy, posted pictures of sunsets. In her bio it said, "Mother of 2 beautiful angels." I thought about it every day and it hit me like a truck. I started acting weird around my parents, studying their faces looking for any resemblance. I'd ask about family medical history for school forms and watch their faces carefully. The worst part was lying to Beatrice. She assumed I knew I was adopted and would ask about my adoption story. I'd make stuff up, saying my parents told me when I was little, but I didn't remember details. She would share her memories about her adoptive family's honesty, how they celebrated her adoption day every year like a second birthday, how they had photo albums of her first parents. I felt jealous and angry. I started digging deeper into my past. I found the hospital where I was born and called pretending to be doing a school project about birth certificates. The nurse accidentally confirmed I had 2 different last names on file. For months I carried this secret. I'd stare at family photos wondering if any of it was real. Were the hospital pictures fake? Was my whole childhood a lie? I began paying attention to things I'd never noticed. How my parents would sometimes stop talking when I entered rooms. How I had no relatives on either side who looked anything like me. I found my original birth certificate online after weeks of searching. My birth mom's name was right there, Vivian Hartwell, not the woman who raised me. I printed it out and hid it in my backpack for days, carrying around proof of my secret identity. I felt like I was living a double life. The tension was eating me alive. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus in school. My grades started dropping. My friends kept asking what was wrong, but I couldn't tell anyone. Beatrice kept texting about planning a reunion with our birth mom. She wanted me to ask my parents about meeting Vivian together. I kept making excuses, saying they were busy or out of town. Every family dinner felt like acting in a play. I'd smile and talk about school while inside I was screaming. When they'd hug me goodnight, Elle wondered if they felt guilty for lying. My heart was pounding as I confronted my parents during dinner last month. "I know I'm adopted," one said, sliding the birth certificate across the table. My mom dropped her fork. Dad went completely pale. "How did you find out?" Mom whispered, tears in her eyes. I told them about the DNA test and Beatrice. Then Dad started laughing. Not mean laughing, but relieved laughing. "Sweetheart," Mom said, wiping her eyes. "We've been waiting 17 years for this conversation. We have a box of letters upstairs that Vivian wrote you. We've been saving them until you were ready to know." I couldn't breathe for a second. "Letters?" My mom stood up, left the table, and came back with an old shoebox wrapped in a faded pink ribbon. My hands trembled as she set it in front of me. "We didn't tell you," she said softly, "because we didn't know how. We were scared, but we've always wanted to do right by you." Inside the box were dozens of envelopes, all addressed to my name in the neat, careful handwriting of someone who cared deeply. Some were decorated with little hearts or smiley faces. I opened the first one. It was from the day I was born.